Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's reading vlog I am going to be reading 3 very different thriller books. I decided to do this vlog because I have not read a lot of thrillers this year. I just felt a little bit burnt out at them at the beginning of the year, and now I have a stack of thrillers that sound really interesting to me, so I thought this vlog would be a good chance to kind of revisit the genre. So let's go ahead, introduce these thrillers really quickly, and then I will get into the reading vlog. So the first book that I am going to be reading for this vlog is The Bachelorette Party by Camilla Sten. This is an author that I have read 2 books from before and enjoyed both, so I'm very much looking forward to this one. I think this one takes place dual POVs. I'm not sure, especially for thrillers, I like going in knowing as little as possible, so I think this one primarily centers a bachelorette party, and I believe we're following a woman who is very interested in a true crime case. A bachelorette party disappeared from this island years ago, and she's now planning a bachelorette trip and decides to go to that same island to try and figure out what happened to the first bachelorette trip and do some true crime amateur sleuthing on her own. So that is book number 1. Book number 2 is The Compound by Rawle. This one, the blurb says, "Nothing to lose, everything to gain, winner takes all," and this is a reality show sort of setup. There are a number of men, a number of women. It's supposed to be like a dating show, maybe a little bit of a survival scenario, but these people are thrown in the middle of the desert and they start being eliminated one by one. I'm very intrigued by this one. I feel like a reality show type of thriller, type of mystery sounds really enticing to me, and I've heard this one also takes place in like the near future, so there's some sci-fi elements going on as well, so I'm very intrigued. And then last but not least, we have King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. The blurb for this one says, "A son returning home, a dangerous debt, secrets about to ignite, and a family about to be consumed by flames." So this one is a thriller featuring a family. They live in a very small southern town and they run the crematorium. That is the family business. We follow one of the sons of this family who returns home after his father dies, and as he starts looking into the circumstances surrounding his father's death, he starts to see a lot of connections between the death, and it might not have been accidental or natural, and there's a lot of different crime and intrigue going on in this town that his family is wrapped up in. S.A. Cosby is turning out to be a very influential writer in the thriller genre, so I'm really excited to give his work a chance during this vlog. So there you have it. These are the 3 books that I am going to be reading for this reading vlog. Cannot wait to spend some time with some thriller books this week. So let's go ahead and dive into the first book. So I am now about 50% of the way through The Bachelorette Party, and it's definitely got what I was looking for in this thriller vlog, where we've got the shorter chapters, we've got a lot of like plot twists or a little bit of suspense at the end of every single chapter. Chapters are shorter, so I feel like this story is moving at a pretty quick pace, which I am appreciating. We are following main character Tessa. What I like about this one is that it takes place in Sweden. I feel like that's definitely not a location I get a lot of in books, especially thrillers. When I'm thinking of very popular thriller authors, they're usually, I'm thinking of authors from the United States or occasionally some in Britain and the UK a little bit, but Sweden is a pretty interesting location and change of pace, which is interesting. But we are following main character Tessa, and she is going to a bachelorette party. The bachelorette party is, for one of her friends she's known since high school. They were very, very close once upon a time. They're not as close now, but still close enough where she gets invited to this bachelorette party. She's going to be a part of the bridal party, and she almost ends up not going. She's having a very rough time in her life right now. She's recently broken up with her girlfriend, and she's also suffering a really severe career damaging event. She runs a true crime podcast, and there was some sort of controversy with that that's really tarnished her reputation. So the last thing that she wants to do is attend this weekend-long party and just celebrate, talk with people, and just have like a fun party good time when she feels like her world is falling apart. However, she learns that the bachelorette party is going to be on this island, and not just any island, but an island where 4 women mysteriously vanished almost a decade ago. It was one of the true crime stories that got Tessa into her obsession with true crime and her podcast, and she thinks that this is the perfect opportunity to go to this bachelorette party, be there for her friend, but more importantly to her, investigate and see if she can uncover any clues that happened in this 10 years old cold case. The 4 women in this cold case were presumed to have just drowned by circumstance. The police kind of chalk their disappearance up to them driving a boat around the island while intoxicated and then them all drowning. However, we find out from the prologue and then from certain snippets throughout this book where we go back in time, we actually see that there is foul play involved. So we know from the prologue something horrible has happened to these 4 women, and of course drowning is horrible, but something that was not just death by misadventure, it was death by foul play. So we know that's going on, and we get those little interjections throughout. We're following Matilda, who is one of the 4 women who no one knows what exactly happened to them. Legally, they're considered missing, probably dead, but no bodies have ever been recovered. So we do get little snippets throughout the book of that, but we're primarily following Tessa as she attends this bachelorette party and she's trying to figure out what's going on. And I think that's a little bit where I'm at odds. Tessa has warmed up to me as a main character. At the beginning, just it's very hard to sympathize with her a little bit, just because I have a lot of thoughts about true crime as a genre of entertainment, and just the way she was going about things. It's very selfish to, you know, show up to your friend's bachelorette party. This is a very important event in her life, and it seems like she doesn't really care about her friend. She just cares about digging into these circumstances. However, I will say 50% of the way in, we are seeing some character growth. We do see her realize that she has made some mistakes, and even in her sphere of true crime reporting in her podcast, she's really starting to realize, thankfully, that she's not just covering these true crime stories, but these are stories that are really important to people. They're stories that have happened to people's loved ones, to real people, and she's kind of uncovering that while on this bachelorette trip. She still wants to investigate and figure out what happened, but having those personal realizations has really helped me warm up to her as a main character. I still think that this is a fast-paced book. It definitely has a thriller-like reading pace to me with the short chapters. I think maybe some people could consider this a little bit on the slow end for a thriller, because we do get a lot of build-up around this bachelorette party, and I do kind of enjoy that. It's got just a smidgen of like rich people drama, almost a little bit like White Lotus-y. Like, you feel like something horrible, something absolutely terrible is going to happen to these women on this isolated island, because part of the allure of the bachelorette trip is that they are going to this very private resort on this island, and it's this nature unplugged getaway where they surrender their phones and they're trying to just become one with nature. A lot of very organic natural foods, yoga, sunrise yoga, all of that. So we already have them being very isolated from the outside world. You know, based on the prologue, something horrible has happened, and the fact that you're reading a thriller, more horrible things are going to happen, but we also have that kind of juxtaposed with a growing tension throughout the group as they're kind of arguing over more mundane things, where they'll have bachelorette style of party games like Never Have I Ever that get a little tense between some of the characters. And while that drama is very petty and probably ultimately definitely is not going to matter too much in spite of some real danger that they're going to experience. I do think it really builds up a level of distrust. Some of these women know each other a lot better than others, and just some of the jabs have become a little bit more pointed. So I do feel all of that has kind of added to some character developing and just a sense of unease and where you're not exactly sure who all you can trust in this one. So far so good. I'm having an enjoyable time with this one. I have read 2 other novels by this author before and enjoyed them both, so I'm expecting the second 50% of this book to be just as enjoyable as the first 50%, but I'm gonna go keep reading and I'll check back in later when I'm done with it. Finished the bachelorette party, and overall I did have a fun time with this one. I will say the ending is not necessarily predictable, but there are enough clues throughout this for you, the reader, to figure out at least parts of what is going on in the reveal. And I know some people don't like when a thriller is predictable. I'm in the camp of as long as it's done well. I like being able to guess a thriller at times, and I especially would prefer a thriller where the clues are placed so neatly that I can figure it out, rather than just this big left field out of their twist that no one could have possibly expected. So overall, this was a pretty fun and fast-paced thriller. I did enjoy the little bit of commentary that we got about true crime and treating that as an entertainment genre rather than a vehicle to spread information and help gain awareness for things. So I did appreciate that. Tessa was very obnoxious at the start. She's a little bit hard for me to warm up to, but I did think her character development throughout this novel, even though it is a pretty short one, I thought that was satisfactory, as well as all of the things going on around her. My biggest complaint is that I feel like I read this out of season. This feels like a very summery thriller read just because of the island setting, the bachelorette party. It's very beachy. A lot of beachy things are happening in this novel, so I feel like this would be a really good summer thriller, but I did enjoy it. I do also kind of selfishly wish that this author, the next thing that she comes out with, leans a little more towards horror, because my favorite thing that I've read from her has been The Lost Village, and that one definitely leaned more horror than thriller, and that's usually my personal preference when it comes to horror versus thrillers. So while the other books that I've read from her have been more on the thriller side, and overall I've enjoyed them, I just think that The Lost Village had something special when it came to the horror elements, so I would like to see this author dip her toe into that genre again. But first book of the vlog done, went pretty well. The second book I'm going to be picking up is The Compound by Rawle, and this one is I think it's a cli-fi. It's set in the very near future, and it's about a reality TV show where, of course, it's not just your run-of-the-mill reality TV show. There are bigger stakes. The blurb for this one says, "Nothing to lose, everything to gain, winner takes all." And I think it's interesting that there is a quote before this book starts, and it's a quote from George Orwell's Animal Farm, so quite interested to see in what direction this book is going to go. I'm going to get to reading. I'll check back in later with an update. Hey vlog, so I am 50% of the way through The Compound, and I am enjoying this one so far. I'm really curious to see when I finish what the kind of average rating or consensus seems to be on this one, because while I do feel like, I mean, I would probably place it within a thriller or maybe like a mystery sort of genre, it's definitely not set up like a typical thriller, and it does feel a little bit more slowly paced than than maybe one would expect when picking up a thriller. So this book is set in the very near future. We are following Lily, and she is one of 20 contestants that are competing on this reality show that takes place at this compound. And it's kind of like a dating show because at the end of each night, every woman, there are 10 women, 10 men, every single woman has to be paired with a man in bed by the end of the evening or they get eliminated. So there is some pressure to make some romantic connections or strategic connections. So there's that element going on. And then there will be challenges given, both team challenges where everyone in the compound has to do something, and also individual challenges that are given to different individuals that will kind of move the plot along in this reality show. Like they'll tell them maybe to interact a certain way with another person or go and do something at a certain time, etc. So it feels very much, and I'm not a very big reality TV show person, so it kind of feels a little Love Island, a little bit Big Brother, and then it's set in this backdrop of the society that we only get little brief snippets of, but they're in the middle of a desert, and there's a lot of strife going on in the world. Several wars have been mentioned, and just it seems like the climate has become even more inhospitable to people. So there is a lot going on, and it's interesting that this does seem to be like a very diversionary sort of thing for people to consume. And much like my feelings on a lot of reality TV, because I do watch some reality TV. I've gotten into The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I've watched that, and then also Dancing with the Stars. I would consider that like a dance competition, but also reality TV. So I mean, I do watch reality TV occasionally, and I feel the same way about this book that I do feel when I'm watching a reality show, is that 50% of the way in I'm watching it, or rather I'm reading it, and I'm very engaged, but at the 50% mark it's hard to exactly nail down why, because not a lot has happened. We're following Lily and her making these different connections in this compound, and it's just been very slow paced. There are a couple of scenes that feel a little bit sinister with what is going on, because the challenges will be very, very benign. It'll be like everyone go around in a circle and share their dating history, something like that. But then we'll also get challenges sprinkled in where it's like every single person in the compound has to hold another person below water for a minute. So there'll be a little bit of like tense challenges sprinkled in that will kind of show some dangerous dynamics and some very unsavory behaviors from people in this competition. So I am wondering if that's going to really ramp up as more and more people get eliminated. So there are just some very bizarre little aspects of this that make you pause, but overall this one does feel like you're following like a reality TV show, and you might wonder like why that is, why you're so invested in something that when you're trying to describe it, not that much has happened, because we're just following Lily and these people living their day to day. They have these very like half scripted is the wrong word for it, more strategic, half strategic and half genuine relationships. Like she's finding some people she does really like getting along with, while other people she knows it's going to be to her advantage to get along with or not get along with. So it is interesting. There's a lot of character dynamics going on there that I do find compelling, but it's hard to explain exactly like why this book is working so much for me. So it is very interesting, very character driven. I am really curious to see how this one ends, so I'm going to get back to reading, and I will check back in later when I've finished The Compound. finished The Compound and I ended up liking this one overall. I will say I do think that the ending of this one, like, it didn't end with a bang, it just kind of fizzled out. And while thinking about what this book is trying to say about late stage capitalism and consumerism, hyper individualism, I understand the choice behind like the book's ending. However, I just don't think it was a very satisfying conclusion for a book, and for that reason I do think I like what was done here a lot. I do think this could have been a lot more effective as a short story. I'm thinking like Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, because we get a very limited scope of what the world looks like beyond this compound, and that's really interesting. And because this is a long form novel, that I think if this would have been a short story instead of a novel and just getting those very brief little glimpses, I think the ending would have worked better in that format, because it very much was thematically appropriate, but it wasn't my favorite ending for a novel, if that makes sense, especially when you invest a lot of time into the story. You really want the story to nail the landing, and I don't think this really does. But I did appreciate the commentary in here. I did appreciate like not just what I already mentioned with late stage capitalism and over consumerism, but also just examining reality TV shows that we have in our reality and our day-to-day, and how they really uphold a lot of very toxic stereotypes, including heteronormativity. And there are only 2 Black characters in this show, and that's commented upon, and the way in which the audience treats them, and the ways in which they get treated on the show, vastly different than their white counterparts. So I did appreciate those commentaries throughout. I do think also Lily is a very apathetic protagonist, and I understand why. Again, I think it would have been a little bit better as a short story to really have this story be one where it is really message forward as opposed to character forward, but just the apathy sometimes made this drag a little bit. Again, I understand why for this kind of commentary that our main character would be a little bit apathetic, but sometimes, especially in like the middle trenches of this book, I was really wondering why we were following Lily and why we weren't following other characters, because a lot of the other characters seemed vastly more interesting than her, and I do think that was intentional. But just for all of that, I do think that this would have been a little bit better of a short story. It just felt a little bit draggy at points, which I don't think necessarily were bad aspects of this one, but it is a little bit hard for me to pitch this as a traditional thriller. Don't really know where I would put this. Maybe just like a cli-fi, or just like a literary, I don't really know, because this definitely doesn't read like a traditional thriller. I think when you expect, especially in the beginning, when you're getting those little glimpses of turmoil and unrest, you think it's going to really ramp up to a level of intensity that this book never gets to. So I don't know, take it with a grain of salt. It's a thriller recommendation, but I did really enjoy this one, and I will be checking out more from this author. I believe it is this author's debut. It is, so I will be checking out more from this author in the future, especially if she goes more into like the literary sort of sphere and really expands upon some of the social commentary in here. I thought was very fascinating. So with that, we have 2 books down, 1 to go. I am now picking up King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. The blurb for this one: a son returning home, a dangerous debt, secrets about to ignite, and a family about to be consumed by flames. So I'm gonna go ahead and dive into this one. I'll check back in with a reading update later. So I am now 40% of the way through King of Ashes, and this has just been an absolutely wild ride so far. I did give a little bit of inaccurate information in the introduction to this vlog just because I didn't know a lot about this one. I like going into thrillers, knowing a basic premise, and then just letting them take me on a ride, and this one I did get some details wrong. So right off the bat, I will say this one feels a whole lot thematically darker than the other two books that I've read for this vlog. This one really does not pull any punches, and just even though all of them have to deal with violence in some way, this one just really takes it up a few notches. So just be prepared when you're going into this book that the descriptions of violence do get quite intense. We are following the Carruthers family in this one. We mostly follow Roman, who is the oldest child, but we do dip into perspectives of Nevaeh and Dante as well. But at the very start of this book, we are following Roman Carruthers, and he has made a big name for himself in Atlanta. He is a financial advisor, financial planner for very influential people, a lot of people in the music industry and just other up and coming industries, very cutthroat and very good with money. He receives the news that his father is in a coma, and his father is in a coma because there was a horrific car accident. So he immediately drops everything in Atlanta and goes back to his hometown to visit his family and visit his father, who is alive. I think I said a family member was dead in the introduction. I thought that was the case, but his father is on life support in a coma, and so he comes back to kind of take care of that situation, potentially say goodbye to his father, because they're just not sure how long his father is going to be in a coma, and then also just help his siblings through their grief as well. So he arrives, and everything is just falling to pieces. Not only is his father in a coma, but it turns out that that accident may not have been an accident at all. And here's another interesting thing about this book is that I thought the premise of it, we were going to be trying to figure out if it was an accident, if it was truly a car accident or not, or if there were other things going on. You find out very early, so much so that I don't think it's necessarily a spoiler, just a little bit more context for this book. You find out so early it's not the case. It was not an accident, and there are so many things happening in this small town involving these siblings. It turns out that Dante has been doing some business dealings with the wrong sort of people and has just gotten in way over his head with a lot of different scenarios. Again, now I'm trying to be a little bit vague because the reveals and just like the between the rock and the hard place that this family is in, you think you see the picture and then you actually zoom in a little closer and realize just how perilous their situation is. So this is a very high tension book because of that. So Roman decides to help his brother Dante figure out how to get out of this near impossible situation that is connected to their father getting in a car accident and getting into a coma, and they are dealing with that. They are trying to keep this burden off of their sister Nevaeh, who has a lot on her plate. She has been taking care of the funeral home business, which is where this book gets its name, the King of Ashes. This family built up a very successful, and I think I said funeral home just a minute ago, but they built up a very successful cremation home. So they take care of dead bodies, they cremate them. Nevaeh has been the one taking over since their father has been in a coma, but also she's the one who's really stepped up to the plate and helped him take care of the business as he's gotten older. And amidst all of this, they're all still very much grappling with the trauma of one day their mother, when they were all children, just up and disappeared, and no one ever figured out what happened to her, if she's dead, if she's alive, if she left of her own accord, or if someone took her. So there is that going on as well. There's so much going on for this family, and again, like I said, every single time you're like, okay, I think I understand the depth of the situation they're in and the stakes stakes, something else happens, another shoe drops that makes the stakes all that much more high stakes. So this is a very tense book, and I'm very worried for the well-being of all three of the Carruthers siblings, and I'm so interested to see how they're going to get out of this situation, because 40% of the way in, I don't see a way out for them, and that makes this a very nerve-wracking book. So I'm gonna keep on reading this one. I'll check back in later with another update, but I have a really good feeling about this one. Just the tension and the plot building and the characterization of all of these siblings, they are all so complex and they're all dealing with grief in very different ways, and all of that is making this quite a compelling read. So I'm gonna keep reading it and I will check back in later with another update. So I finished King of Ashes, and right off the bat, if you only pick up one book from this reading vlog, I would highly recommend this one. I definitely see the hype behind this author, and I've actually heard from a lot of people, like in their reviews, who have read all of S.A. Cosby's work. It seems like the general consensus is that this is really good, but it is not his best. So that has me really, really excited to dive into his backlist, because I definitely had a time with this one, and it was such an interesting reading experience, because at the end of every single chapter I had the weird dual experience of needing to continue, wanting to know immediately what was going to happen next and not wanting to put this down, but at the same time really wanting to put this book down, because I couldn't see a way out for these main characters. The horrible things kept coming. This is definitely like a gang violence related story, and just the ins and outs of that were just very hard to stomach. So know going into this one that this does not shy away from descriptions of violence. There is a lot of torture, violence, death in this book, and they are described very brutally. So just know that. But it was a very interesting reading experience. I did not want to put this down. I had to know what happened next, but I was genuinely so worried for these characters, and I didn't want to know what they were going to get into, because with every single decision, primarily the ones that Roman and Dante were making, every single time they made choices, I was audibly groaning out loud at some of them, knowing the consequences that would happen because of the decisions they made. I think one thing that is not my favorite about this book is that it does really rely very, very heavily on miscommunication. The three siblings, the Carruthers siblings, they're all supposed to be in things together. They're supposed to be a united front, and that's especially important when their father is struggling in a coma in the hospital, and yet these siblings are keeping things from each other and intentionally leaving out certain siblings from really important information. And I felt very frustrated by Roman and Dante intentionally keeping Nevaeh out of a lot of their problems. I felt like that miscommunication really set them up for not success later on in this book, and it was a recurring theme, and I understood why misinformation played a part in this, and just that family dynamic, because you do get a couple of flashbacks in here, so you kind of see how their trauma and their family dynamics were built up over time, and that they want to protect Nevaeh. But the miscommunication, not just that, but just between a lot of different other characters, and especially because Roman is juggling all of these different hats and he's doing things to keep various people safe, the amount of intentional misinformation and deception in this one was very frustrating. So I didn't love that, and I did have some gripes with just the pacing of the ending. I felt like the middle dragged just a smidge with this one, not enough to even call it a slow-paced middle, but I did think that the middle was stretched out a little bit long, and some of that page count should have been dedicated to the end of this book. I felt like it wrapped up really quickly once we understand everything that's going on. It kind of feels like this book just ends ends. So I do wish the pacing would have just changed a little bit there. However, when I was reading this, when I was reading the middle of this book, it did not feel laggy. That's just in retrospect, thinking of it, maybe taking just a couple of chapters of the middle and pushing them towards the end to kind of tie up some things that I feel just started and ended very, very suddenly. But overall, I definitely see the hype of this author. I will definitely be reading more S.A. Cosby in the future because this was tense. This is exactly what I'm looking for in a thriller. I want an experience where it is so hard to put down, hard to look away from, and it just feels like a high octane, action-packed, suspenseful time from beginning to end. So definitely this was my favorite book out of this entire vlog. And if you're going to pick up only one book from this vlog, I would recommend this one, even though I did enjoy all three of the books that I read for this reading vlog. But that is going to be the end of this vlog. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give this vlog a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, let me know if you've read any of these books or not, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my content, stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!